Good evening. Call to order the April 8th, 2019 meeting of the Regional Transit Board of Directors. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Director Budge?
Here.
Director Hanson? Director Harris?
Here.
Director Howell?
Here.
Director Hume?
Here.
Director Jennings? Director Miller?
Here.
Director Natoli? Director Chenier and Cerna, Directors Chenier and Cerna will be marked as absent, and Chair Kennedy.
Here.
With that, we have a quorum at 100 votes. This meeting of the Sacramento Regional Transit District will be cablecast without interruption on Metro Cable 14, the local government affairs channel. Tonight's meeting will air on April 10th at 1 p.m. and replayed on April 11th at 9 a.m. and will be webcast at www.sacmetrocable.tv. It is also closed caption. Members of the audience wishing to address the board should fill out a speaker card located at the rear of the room and provide it to me or Adam. Please speak into the microphone and state your name for the record. We would appreciate everyone turning off their cell phones. Thank you.
Thank you. And would you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First item.
First item is the consent calendar, items 1 through 3.
I'll move consent.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion, questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained?
Motion carries at 100 votes. The next item is introduction of special guests. Item number 4, Gold Standard Award for Security, U.S. Department of Homeland Security, presented by Henry Lee.
Good evening, Chair, members of the board, and the public. Today, for special guests, we are very, very honored to have our colleagues from the Federal Transportation Security Administration in attendance today. First, we have our Federal Security Director from D.C., Mr. Sid Hanna. And also, we have a Regional Administrator, Mr. Jimmy Adams, who manages 11 states. That's a huge responsibility, and that's Jimmy there. And also we have a Public Information Officer, Rory Dankers. Great. And we have a Regional Security Inspector, Bob McQuay. Bob? Here. And we finally have Assistant Federal Security Director of Inspection, Bo Thomason. Mr. Seth Hanna is here today to present the district with the prestigious Gold Standard Award for Security. This award is the top recognition that TSA can give to a transit agency for implementing best practices when it comes to security. SACRT truly understands the importance of security and the need for the passengers to feel safe and have a great riding experience. Over the last 5 years, SACRT board, staff, and community leaders work together tirelessly on improving safety and cleanliness of our system. This achievement is the culmination of and recognition of our great efforts to emphasize security. We have launched a 24/7 security operations center, which monitors more than 1,000 live feed cameras on our trains, buses, and throughout our system. We hired 70 transit agents to enforce fair and help our customers. And all of this, along with many other initiatives, have made a significant differences. Our crime rate has dropped for 3 consecutive years, and is now among the lowest across to thousands of transit agencies in the country. And the fare evasion rate on our light rail system has dropped from over 15% 3 years ago to less than 4% now. Here from the TSA to present this award is our Federal Security Director, Sid Hanna. Mr. Hanna.
Thank you, Mr. Lee.
You're welcome.
Good evening. How's everyone doing?
Good.
Good, good. I have a plaque and a letter from the administrator recognizing Sacramento Regional Transit District for this Gold Standard Award. I'm going to go through the letter first and then we'll talk a little bit. So this letter is addressed to Mr. Lee. Congratulations to the Sacramento Regional Transit District for earning the 2018 Gold Standard Award. It gives me great pleasure to recognize SAC-RT's successful efforts in establishing and maintaining a strong security program, as evidenced by the high scores on your most recent baseline assessment for security enhancement review. That's what we call the BASE review. The Transportation Security Administration developed BASE to support our strategic goals of increasing domain awareness, enhancing prevention and protection capabilities, and furthering response preparedness of transit systems nationwide. BASE is a comprehensive review of your security program, focusing on 17 categories identified by the transit community as fundamental for a sound transit security program. Your system attained high scores across all categories. This caliber of performance deserves special recognition. I commend you and your organization for the commitment and hard work this level of achievement requires, and I wish you success in maintaining the high standard of security you have demonstrated. Signed, David P. Pekoski, Administrator.
Just want to share your high score is 98%.
So, I think the score is really, it's a number at the end of the day. So I want to make sure that you understand that it takes a lot. 98 is a high number, I get it, but you have to understand it takes time to get to something like 98%. Understanding there's 6,800 transit systems out there across the country, and the year that we did this, 2018, there was only 92 that voluntarily applied for this, and out of the 92, 7 were awarded with the Gold Standard Award. So this is that's the number I would look at and say, this is what Sacramento is sitting at, top 7 in the country for that 2018. So this is due to the partnership that we have with Mr. Lee and with the board. This is a commitment through the community. It takes funding, it takes focus, and I'm really proud to see the dedication. We've seen Sacramento grow in the years, especially working with the security plan, looking at all the high-risk assessments, and not just pointing it out, but actually taking the action forward to put them at the Gold Standard Award. So I'm very more honored to be here. Thank you so much. And this is my hometown. I'm not from DC, so I apologize. This Sacramento is my field office, and I'm very glad for the Sacramento RT. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
The only problem is, Henry, you're going to have to do this or better next year.
And 98% means there's room for improvement.
Okay, I'll let you guys hold the sign over here.
Okay, right here. 1, 2, 3. One more. 1, 2, 3.
And 1, 2, 3.
That's who that happens.
Very good.
10, 13.
Patrick, can I make a comment?
Mr. Harris would like to make a comment.
So, you know, this is a very significant achievement, and I don't think it should be taken lightly. When I was elected, I guess this is my 5th year. 4 years ago, I got a significant number of emails talking about safety and cleanliness on RT, and that many people really felt that using the system put them at risk. And in the last 2 years, I've received no comments like that whatsoever. So, you know, I'm pretty proud of the actions of Henry and staff, and also a few decisions that the board has taken to turn around the system. It is much cleaner, it's much safer, and our ridership numbers reflect that. So this is very significant. I hope that we can broadcast this out to the whole city and the whole region, because we're doing the right things. And I'd like to thank the FTA, and for you to come and bestow this honor upon the system is really tremendous. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The only thing that I will add is that it was mentioned that there is room for improvement when you can go from 98 to 100. But in all seriousness, there's also room to go the other way. So as much as we have made great strides to really truly be safe, clean, and convenient, we can't let up, and future decisions that we make have to always keep that safety in mind, because it is perhaps one of the biggest detriments to people riding the system is if there's the perception, even if it's not a reality, but the perception that it's not safe. So,
Very timely.
yes, sir.
I was just going to say, I totally agree with you, and we've already reached out to Mr. Lee and let him know that we will work with him this year to let him know the areas that were a little bit below, and we will offer all the training that we can provide if it's tabletop. And that's the great thing about us partnership. We can also help support the funds to take care of those training that covers that area. So we're looking forward to you guys maintaining and going above the 98%. So.
Great, thank you.
And the trainings are it's free. Trainings are free.
Okay, next item.
Next item, public addresses the board on matters not on the agenda.
Mike Barnbaum.
Thank you. I'd like to talk about state legislative priorities, but let me make this statement. It will be by request of bringing some items back to the board's May meeting, as there's only one due to the Memorial Day holiday, and the June meeting, and there's only one meeting in that month, and that's going to be also the budget meeting. So here's the groundwork. On May 22nd, and that's a Wednesday, will be the California Transit Association's legislative conference, and it will be at the Citizen Hotel here in downtown Sacramento. And it will be an all-day conference. So one report back, I think it would be appropriate for the meeting in May, is to request that the board have an action item authorizing the general manager, CEO, and or his designee to attend such legislative conference that was mentioned. And at the June board meeting, have a special presentation by CTA Executive Director and the designee from RT that it had attended the legislative conference to make a presentation to the board about the Transportation Development Act and what's going on with it. So there's a little background from CTA's Facebook page. That act that I mentioned was known as Senate Bill 325 of 1971, and it was signed into law by then Governor Ronald Reagan. What it did was that while TDA has evolved over 48 years since its adoption, many observing the state's 21st century transportation landscape have raised the question whether the law is due for an overhaul, either amend or repeal. That prospect entered the conversation formally last August, when the chairs of the legislative transportation committees, Senator Jim Bell of San Jose and Assemblymember Jim Frazier of Antioch, requested the California Transit Association to spearhead a policy task force to examine TDA. In a letter to the association, the chairs specifically requested that the task force fully examine TDA's performance measures applicable to the state's public transit systems and produce a legislative recommendation for any reforms or changes to the current programs the task force chooses to recommend. That could be huge if it's amended or repealed. We don't know what's going to happen, but now that this has been brought up and there's an opportunity to bring the two items as requested to the board's agenda, I would request the board make a motion to get these items on the agenda, and we'll be prepared going into next fiscal year. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Helen Hadid.
name Helen. I need buses, more buses, please. And I need 10 for any buses, please, please. You need more the buses. Sorry. And schedule more buses, please. Thank you. God bless.
Thank you, Helen. Jeffrey Tartagia.
Well, Board, tomorrow you have a, should we say, one other transportation bill dealing with an exemption. I'm going to find it rather interesting to listen to. Shall we say, Friday participated in the conversation with the general manager and put in a request about, is Elk Grove now going to be making of their regular bus routes any stops in Sacramento? Right now that doesn't happen, but I wonder, since when June, July occurs, whether that is something that is going to be considered and possibly doing some changes. I've noticed how quickly I can get from Elk Grove to here on your system, and I compliment you on that. At the same time, I will also offer is thank you guys for noticing about the electronic bulletin boards. I have seen so many of them that are working now, and I have not seen something to talk about the Connect card right through there, and I'm hoping to see some other changes indeed take place in the future. I am next going to go to thank you this time that as I'm leaving for your Future of Transportation meeting taking place down in Midtown, taking place today, I'm glad that somebody from RT is going to be there. I think Jessica's on her way for the panel discussion that's taking place tonight down there. Should be interesting. So I'm leaving you with that, and will also say to you that once again, reminder for paratransit, I hope before the September 8th rollout that you will have a joint session, because all the grandfathering and whatever else that needs to be done between RT and paratransit. You have not scheduled that, to my knowledge, of a joint meeting, and it's been a long time since you've had a joint meeting with paratransit. And you've got a lot of things that you're changing. So I encourage this board to consider that. I also find some of the interesting thoughts that are going on there, and I'm not sure that I'm ready to say SACOG have a full-time RT board person on there, when some of the representation I see right now for RT on other boards of what I see it looking like. So I'm hoping that better reports come back from our JPLs as well as our other individuals about what's going on with the other things that would affect RT, or what should be coming back to RT that might have an impact on regional transit. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Next item.
Next item, item number 5, new business, resolution authorizing staff to release the Sacramento Regional Transit District preliminary FY 2020 operating and capital budgets, and said notice of a public hearing for May 13th, 2019, presented by Brent Bernicker.
Good evening, Chair and members of the board. So what we've done is we've completed our first draft of the FY20 capital and operating budget. Over the past 3 years, RT has been making significant functional changes that have resulted in efficiencies, and we're now at a point where we're looking for more challenges. As you know, we recently annexed the city of Folsom, Citrus Heights, and in July 1st, we'll be operating Elk Grove services. We're really excited about that. Bringing on these new endeavors will obviously increase the budget, so you'll see an increased budget, and half of it is because of those new endeavors. So when looking at the new budget for FY20, you'll see that the new budget is $190.1 1.7 approximately. And if you look at some of the breakdown, 83% of those costs go to operation and about 17% go to administrative expenses. For this year, I think it's possible to continue at this ratio. However, in the future, if we take on more services, we'll look at the administrative costs as well. The capital budget is targeted at $262 million, and there's three categories of the capital budget that we're focusing on. The first one is the light rail modernization project. The second is CNG bus replacements. As you know, many of those buses, about half of them are going to need to be replaced over 4 years, in the next 4 years, I'm sorry. And then the debt service payment. So I think there's a few new board members on here, so I'll give you a little background on the debt service payment. In November of 2012, SAC-RT issued $86 million of debt for the South Line project. That resulted in a debt payment of about $5.5 million. In 2017, in February of 2017, we defeased about $46 million of this debt and prepaid about 3 years of debt service. So in FY20, since we had that 3-year prepayment, that debt is now going to come on, and it's going to come in at about $3.5 million per year. So on the next slide, what we've done is we put together a pie chart showing the five major revenue categories. And the first largest revenue is their state assistance. That's about 37%. This represents our TDA money. This is what we refer to as our LTF, STA, and SB1 funds. Our second category that's large is the Measure A funds, but as you can see, we only receive enough to fund about 24% of our operations. And then the next funding is the federal funds, followed by fares and other revenues. On slide 4, this is kind of an example of what we'd like to see in a new business model, where you can actually see where Measure A funds would make up about 62% of the budget. Doing this would allow us to be less reliant on the federal funds for operations, and we'd be able to better flex our funds for capital projects. So the next slide is a service delivery breakdown, and it just goes over our categories of service and where we spend our money. So bus operations uses approximately 52% of our costs. Light rail is about 32%, paratransit makes up about 8%, and public safety is about the remaining 8%. The next slide is the capital budget, and it shows you where those three categories that we spend our largest money on. The first is a fleet management program, which represent the replacement of these vehicles, and some of those are the 20-year light rail cars that need to be replaced. This next slide is really important, and I'm going to slow down on this slide, but there's in this chart, there's 3 fiscal years that are being shown. The first is 2018, the next is 2019, which we're still in, obviously, and getting close to wrapping up. And the next one is the future, which is going to be what we're budgeting, which is fiscal year 20. So if you look at this slide, you'll see this trend where in fiscal year 18, we ended the year with a $10.5 million operating reserve balance. But as you recall, we also had some surplus funds, about $4 million. So altogether, that's close to $15 million that we saved. We put that $4 million towards paying down the line of credit as a working capital. In fiscal year 19, from a conservative standpoint right now, we're estimating that we could probably save at least $5 million, which is great. And so you'll see that balance will move up to about $20 million. And then fiscal 20, you'll see that it remains flat. We did not project any building of reserves in fiscal year 20, and there's 2 reasons for that. First of all, we have the debt service payment of $3.5 million that's coming on, and the second is the SAC Forward project has resulted in a recommendation to bring about $1.7 million more of extra service. So instead of putting it towards reserves, we're putting it towards service and a debt service payment. And then from an outlook standpoint, just looking forward, we had a couple of points that we wanted to bring up. First, we're really happy about the SB1 revenues. They're much more stable right now. The debt service is going to continue for another 25 years. And we'll continue to set aside funds as new revenues come in. On the capital side, we really need to replace our aging fleet. I think we've done a lot from an operational standpoint at fixing some of the challenges that we had, and now this is about a capital project standpoint. From a capital project standpoint, we really need to focus on this light rail fleet replacement. And then the last slide I actually want to jump into is just our final schedule for the budget. So today we're actually at the point of releasing this. And early next week on our website, we're actually going to post the line item details. A lot of the members of the public had asked for that, so we'll be posting that on our website. May 13th, we'll have our official public hearing, and then June 10th, we'll present the final budget for adoption. And so that concludes the presentation. Are there any questions?
Questions?
Yeah, I have a couple actually.
Sure.
Can you go back to the Measure A increase? Give us the pie chart before and after.
Okay, sure. Oops, sorry. I think there's the first one. So this is where we're currently at. We're about 45.4 million, and it makes up about 24% of our revenues.
Okay, so go to the next one.
Sure.
And
what we're looking for.
please explain to me how you get from one slide to the next.
Yeah, sorry. What we're doing here. Okay, so what we're doing here, this is reality. This is where we're at today. If you look up at our revenues and say, where do you get all your source of revenues? State assistance is where we get the bulk of our revenues. Measure A makes up about 24%. Now, in an ideal model, and one last point I want to make is federal assistance makes up 20%. So what we're doing here is we take our federal monies and flex it towards the operating budget. A lot of transit agencies don't do that. They're shifting away and pushing their federal funds to capital projects. And so what we'd like to do in this next model is see how there's no federal funds up here. We'd like to push that over to the capital side so we can continue to do state or good repair with that money. And instead, we'd like to supplement it with a future Measure A where we increase.
Okay, well, I'm going to remind everybody that the STA board has not yet decided whether or not it will go forward with another Measure A.
Yes.
And that is a dramatic increase. And
yes.
I think that this is very premature to be putting this into the budget when that decision will not be made by the STA board until, I don't know, September. So, and that is a gargantuan increase.
Yeah, sorry, and one thing to clarify, this is not in the budget. This is, at the very top, we're just saying this would be an ideal model if we could get transit funded. This slide right here is exactly what's in the budget. So we're just saying in an ideal situation, we'd love our revenues to look like this. So we have not made any projections to go in this direction. We're just suggesting that if the board so chooses to pursue this through the STA and whatnot, that's what it would look like.
And it would be nice if I had come here on a gold-plated unicorn, but that was not the case.
Right.
What? So, just...
That wasn't yours parked outside?
That'd be nice.
Just pointing that out. That's a very ambitious goal.
Okay.
And my second question is, I'm looking at the staff report, page 7 of 9, and this relates to the 2 gold line issues that are mentioned on that page. The first is the expansion of the light rail vehicles, and that's for 10 new vehicles, and that's the price that's shown there is $20.2 million. Are those really $2 million apiece? Or is there confusion because that the $20.2 million includes the $18.9 million from the bottom of the page that's for the sidetrack?
We have 7 already. That's only for 3 more.
So yeah, maybe just to start with your first question is a vehicle is not $2 million. It's closer in the range of a $5 to $5.5 million for each vehicle. So this is not representing all those vehicles right here. Let me just check with David just to get some clarification on the 20 that she's referring to.
Yeah, basically that includes.
Let me introduce David Goldman, our budget director, and he can maybe respond to the exact question on that 20.
Good evening, board. Yeah, right now in the budget we have about 7 vehicles that were awarded as part of the TRCP application that we got last year. This is just the increase in costs plus 3 more vehicles. We only were awarded 7 vehicles in that application. In order to run the project in the ideal situation, we'd want to get 10. That's what we put in our original application, but we're only awarded 7. So what we're doing here is we're adding this to the budget so we can go ahead and apply for future grants. Because one of the things they ask for when you're applying for grants is it in your CIP? Is it in your budget? So that's all we're doing here. We're adding it to it so we'll have an easier time applying for future grants.
Okay, so are you telling me that these vehicles are $5 million apiece?
5.5.
It's 5.5.
We're still waiting to hear back from the joint procurement that we're doing with San Diego, but we're hearing that it's somewhere in the range of $5 to $6 million a piece.
Okay, and that's just for a single car?
Correct.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so that is separate from the $18.9 million below. Okay.
Yes.
That
Yeah,
answers my
and
question.
And Brent, just for clarification, for the TIRCP grant, its total fund was for 20 new light rail vehicles, 7 new and 13 replacement, so it's 20. Then I think David put additional 3, the funding for additional 3 new vehicles. So that's total is 23. Yeah,
Okay. Thank you.
you're welcome.
Mr. Miller.
Yeah, thank you. Brent, we show an 8.5% increase.
correct.
What's the major reason for that?
Yeah, so I think one of the things I wanted to start out with at the beginning was that the 2 big components are the annexations. So we have about $6.5 million for the Elk Grove service. You have additional funding for Folsom, the annexation. So about half of that is from the Folsom annexation and Folsom, Citrus Heights, and Elk Grove. A quarter of that is due to the new service that we're going to be producing, and then a quarter of that remaining amount is about for new salaries and the 3% increases that we've been negotiating with our bargaining groups.
Okay,
And
so
cost
How
of
much,
I
how
thought it
much of
might-
that,
Sure.
sorry.
I thought it might be a little overly optimistic, but
Is that
these are new funds, really.
Yes, and I can get it down to exactly the columns if need be, but that you're going to get a good sense of half of that is the Elk Grove, Folsom, and Citrus Heights annexation.
Just curious, because it seemed a
Because
little
that's the new service, yeah.
big jump. And I was having a little trouble. I think I understand this now. The ideal is if a new sales tax measure passed, because that's a big difference in state assistance from 70 million to 17.2.
It is, and
But you'd use that elsewhere as well with the state? You said the federal government.
yeah, and that's assuming that we'd keep the same. But and there's a lot of factors.
Oh, sure.
There's a lot of hope in that, to your point. But I
It would
think
look a lot
we have to look at this as what are other transit agencies doing, and they're moving away from federal funds. Well, to move away from federal funds, we need some other supplemented revenue source.
Got it.
And that's where we'd look for Measure A to, if there would be a Measure A, how would that help us? And,
Okay,
and
now I
so,
understand.
yeah,
Because it didn't correlate to
sorry about
Any-
that.
any of
I'll
this.
make it clearer next time.
charts I was looking at.
Any others? If I were to make a suggestion, it would be to not show that slide in the context of the budget.
It's a good point.
But use that slide when we're having discussions with STA down the road.
Okay. Point
And
taken.
I think the other thing that you need to account for is if we're looking at an increase in ridership and an increase in fare box collection, you also need to look at the additional state and federal money that is now going to be diverted to RT from Folsom, Elk Grove, and Citrus Heights. And that needs, because it's kind of hard to make the argument that you want to reduce dependence on state and federal funding when your state and federal funding is actually increasing because of those annexations.
Yeah, I think one thing, a good
May
point,
not be a lot of money, but it's an increase.
but it's something, and we do factor that in the budget. Maybe the one thing I want to have as a takeaway is from a fare box recovery standpoint, we are seeing actually less fare box revenue coming in because if you recall at the last board meeting, we actually reduced our fares, and so that
Well, but I think the objective
But
in
you're right.
doing that was to increase the amount of ridership.
ridership.
So-
Yes, yeah. I just wanted to clarify.
Okay.
We're focusing more on ridership and.
Okay.
Yep.
Dr. Hume.
Can I just for 1 second? When Brendan present this, what message he's really trying to say is, in the normal best practices in the transit industry, federal money and state money normally be used for the state of good repair, for the capital projects, and the local funding normally used for the operation, like San Diego, LA, Bay Area, they have 1 penny sales tax, local sales tax for the operations. Then, so the 80% of federal state money be used for the state good repair. If we have done that in the past, then we would not have the issue like what we're facing in terms of the light rail, because our light rail, 1/3 of light rail vehicles are at the end of useful life. A lot of 1/3 will be very soon, and then a lot of 1/3 will be in 10 years. That is a total about $500 million. That's why we're, our state of good repair was so bad situation, and we are begging, crying to get some money to address that issue, because right now, all those, we did not do those still good repair stuff. Now all the issues accumulated at this point, which we have to address.
I have no problem with with asking for it, but I think you're being extremely
Absolutely,
overly
yes.
optimistic that you're going to get it.
Yes, we will take that out.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
I think there's other STA board members not in the room tonight that would have fallen over had they seen that.
Yes, we will.
Mr. Hume.
Thank you, Chair. Brent, in looking at the budget, I see the increase for professional services up 6.2%. And looking at the breakdown of that, it has increase for security costs, increase for media campaign, the cost of implementing SAC RT Forward and Smart RT and Elk Grove service. Is there anything in there to shore up the paratransit agreement that we drastically reduced several years ago?
We left it, as far as I recall, we left it flat right now in this first draft, yes.
Okay, and is there a reason behind that?
Just contractually, when you look at the contract, that's what we had assumed. We had assumed that if you look at when we initially entered into the contract, I think there was about 300, we estimated demand to be about 383,000 trips. And I see Tiffany's here, and I could probably get an exact number from Tiffany. But demand has dropped significantly since we first entered into the contract. There's an opener clause in there that says if revenue goes below 10%, we can reopen it. So instead of reopening it, we just left it flat at this point in time. So I think it's conservative where we're at right now. That being said, we're in discussions with paratransit regarding the regional service with Elk Grove, and so this is coming up. You're bringing up a good conversation. We just met last Friday, and so they're going to nod, and we're right in the middle of that. But again, this is a first draft, so we want to be conservative.
Well, the numbers I'm looking at here, and granted they are from PI, not from RT, it shows that they've absorbed about an additional 6% as far as the portion of cost of service that is absorbed within the paratransit budget rather than the RT budget. Does that sound about right? Regardless of the number of trips provided, costs being what they are?
I haven't been able to look at their data, but I would say from a paratransit perspective, that could be the case. I wouldn't know. But because we have left paratransit to kind of manage their own funds, I think we're just looking at it from how much are we paying on a total basis and on a per trip basis. So what we look at is the total cost is about $11.5 million for the contract, and then based on that demand, it was estimated at about $37 a trip. And then if demand drops, and now we're looking at about $38 a trip, that's the stats that we're looking at. We really don't want to get in the business of telling paratransit how to spend their money, but rather that we just need to make sure our cost increases don't go up significantly.
Or at all in this case, apparently.
That as well.
So then on page 13, and talking about sort of the overall goals of this budget, one of them calls out studying paratransit's business model. Can you explain to me what that's meant to imply? Or?
Yeah, I think when we look at the business model, that's kind of our joint efforts when we look at contractual negotiations to figure out are we going to be asking for additional trips because we're expanding service, regional trips, exactly what we go through in the normal process.
Okay. I'll come back to this at a later point.
Okay, sure. Anyone else? All right. Is that all, Mr. Menninger?
Yes.
Actually, Chair, we need a motion and a second to release the budget
okay.
for public.
I'll move the item.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained?
Motion carries at 100 votes. Item number 6, information, update on the Sacramento Area Council of Governments Green Means Go pilot program presented by Brent Berniker.
Okay, great. So the purpose of this issue paper is to provide the board with information regarding our recent funding opportunity. As many of you know, SACOG is proposing a new Green Means Go funding plan. The plan is still in its early stages, as it has initiated a budget request letter to the state and assembly subcommittees. This chart, or this PowerPoint slide right here, this is a summary of the plan. The proposed funding is targeted to help the region meet higher greenhouse gas reductions percentages of about 19%. The plan assumes receipts of about $400 million over 4 years. The funding is not formula-based. Transit agencies cannot directly apply. And the funding uses a green zone approach. Those are, and I'm sure there's a lot more, but we just kind of identified the 4 main categories. And although we applaud this effort, SAC-RT does have some concerns with the early concepts. The first concern we have is, will this proposed funding jeopardize our existing funding? The next question is, will this funding make existing projects less competitive? And then finally, could some of this new money be used towards non-public transit operations that would further increase road traffic or not provide significant improvements to the greenhouse gas? As such, staff is at a point where we're strongly going to urge for language that would spell out that the funding would not impact the existing transit funding. The next, our research has shown that the SAC-RT bus and rail system can provide significant greenhouse gas reductions to the region. Therefore, making an investment in public transportation should be done through the modernization of vehicles, as these improvements really improve efficiencies, reliability, and lower our maintenance costs. We believe these improvements will drive more people towards transit and thus reduce congestion on the roads and highways. Another concern we have with this is the new funding is not formula-based, and rather it's a competitive application process in which transit agencies would not be able to directly apply for these funds. The problem with not allowing transit agencies to apply directly for the funds is we'd be beholden to another jurisdiction to cobble through some of the small amount of funding that transportation needs. This means public initiatives would take a backseat to some other initiatives. Our understanding of the funding plan is SACOG is going to look for a green region zone where they could apply those funds, and that would apply, those efforts would go towards reducing greenhouse gas. These green zones would allow for incentives for higher density development, and therefore these developments would attract more residents, which in turn would create more transit users. And although this conceptually is a good plan, and it is good from a long-term perspective, it is a long-term vision. To start, you need plans, you need designs, you need approvals, funding, interest, and it must mature. So these developments will eventually bring about new riders, but those riders will only contribute through the fare revenues. So the problem we see is our region's public transportation providers are all experiencing problems right now with vehicles at or near the end of their useful life. With these replacements, moving mass amounts of people in an efficient, safe manner is not a reality. So what we did also is we did a peer comparison to see how other MPOs fund transits. And what we found is when doing this comparison, we saw that other regions allocate about 27% of their flexible funding towards public transit initiatives. Public operators in our region have only received approximately 16%. Therefore, anytime new fundings arise, it'd be in the region's best interest to push for that same level of funding to show that the Sacramento area and the people, the residents in here, have a positive experience, and we have a positive way to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. That being said, we're at a point right now where we're seeking direction from the board on this position with Green Means Go. And we've provided a couple options up there for you to consider. One is we can prepare a letter of support just as it is. The second is we can have some additional criteria assigned to that letter with some better ideas. And the third would be just to come up with new ideas. So what we're looking for right now, Chair, is maybe some direction from the board.
Okay, we'll take some questions for staff, and then we do have a couple of cards. Director Natoli.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Brett, just to maybe probe this a little deeper, obviously in seeking direction here, that just in light of the last item we had in conversation about the need to address replacement of vehicles that have seen their life cycle and now are, fast approaching time when the existing system is going to be strained. And as you talked about this as briefly and provide the background information that was provided by SACOG, at least the summary, and then this letter from Senator Pan and Assemblymember Cooley. I guess I'm trying to understand a little better than, and maybe that's part of your question to us, is that this $400 million is being put out there as being something that we may want to join in, I guess, in supporting, that if it's asking for these things in addition to, it's our backbone system currently, the RT backbone system, whether it be bus or certainly light rail, that makes some of those corridors attractive already for infill development and for reduction of greenhouse gases. How is it then that with this, that since it can't be used for either fix and repair, it has to be for these new initiatives, it seems to me that it's almost contrary to where we are at least currently positioned. And so maybe take a moment just to elaborate, at least from staff's perspective, what the thinking is, and then I have a question to follow on to that. So I'm just...
Sure. I think right now there's a lot of technology out there that we're all looking for, whether it's automated AV technology, different technology to move people around. I think we are, like to your point, we do have a backbone. We have a rail system currently in place. We're looking at a capital project of about $400 million in the future to replace all our light rail vehicles, and there is no money currently in sight to do that. So anytime there is a funding opportunity in place, I think we, from a staff perspective, see the first priority here is, now that we fixed the operating budget, is to focus on that capital need. And I think between that and replacing the second round of buses, anything we can do to improve that will improve the reliability, safety, and security. So we really want to encourage that, as opposed to these new developments where we already have some money where we've been pushing in that direction already.
And what did you make sure I understood you correctly? You said transit agencies could not apply directly either for these dollars, or if the dollars were to come down to this particular a flow to SACOG under this initiative, that transit agencies basically are beholden to SACOG then for the allocation?
Well, actually the jurisdictions, there's about 20 jurisdictions that would apply directly, and we would have to apply with those jurisdictions, but we would not be able to be the direct recipient of those funds.
I guess I would just make a note here as we're talking about this evening. I guess one of the things that, after you've given us some further information behind your presentation, that concerns me is that if this amount of money were sought and awarded, that I think it becomes, and you've asked for some maybe qualifiers to this, that it wouldn't prohibit us from, as an agency, in this case the transit agency, to apply for future funding. But if, for example, this region were pulling down $400 million for these new initiatives for electrification, for technological developments, and for allocation to the initiatives as outlined here, I think it would be a very difficult argument, though, with those that dole out the money, and whether it's through the ARB or through the legislature or through other funding sources, for us to say, well, we need another $400 million through whatever funding streams are available to us using some local match to change out our light rail vehicles and modernize our system. Because I think it would be taken, at least in my view, kind of talking out both sides of our mouth. Well, here we are, we've drawn down this money for these initiatives, you're a partner in that, and yet you're coming to us as a funder and seeking additional monies. And again, I don't know what sort of qualifiers you could either add to this resolution or to this letter that's going to give us some assurances that we aren't, cutting off one foot, either unbeknownst or beknownst to us, in order to be a partner in something like this. And so it seems to me that's a peril here, at least as I understand it. And again, I've only seen the presentation one time. Mr. Corliss is in the audience, obviously. But this is a big deal. I mean, it may be a big deal from lots of perspectives, but I think it's a big deal for where we are as an agency that's trying to make some pretty modest improvements and address issues that we recognize have taken head on, and then to make sure that those available funding streams, either presently known or future to potentially be out there, that we're going to join in this, and then and I think maybe put ourselves in peril of getting funding through other funding streams that would help us replace that aging fleet.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, Ms. Howell.
I'm just curious as to who were the peers that you referred to? The 27%.
We had two peers, the MTC and San Diego.
That's usually
SCAG, sorry. Southern California, sorry.
So you're looking at our peers being major cities that are much more dense than this region?
Well, we could expand this and get more percentage.
I only asked that question because, having been doing contract negotiations with various labor organizations for the last 20 years, you can be very, very selective as to which ones you want to compare yourself to. So if there's a way to look at that in a more reasonable manner,
sure,
so that we're not looking at San Diego versus downtown LA and the city of Sacramento, given that the large area that we serve, and that much of it is not anywhere near as dense as either of those locations. I think that's important.
We could do that.
And the other suggestion or question really is, have there been any discussions with any of the member agencies about the split of transportation fees and whether or not transportation fees associated with new development, either infill or not infill, and what percentage of that might go directly toward transit? I think that discussion maybe needs to take place.
Right. That would be another one we could follow up with as well. We have
You've
not
got,
had that.
more agencies now with 3 recent annexations to have that conversation with.
Right.
Okay, I have one. The whole issue of transit not being able to apply directly, is that something that came from the state, or is that a SACOG decision?
I might have to refer to the gentleman behind me.
He's here, so I figured you would. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Then I'm going to go to the cards. Barbara Stanton. Well, you get here early. Oh.
Barbara Stanton, Ridership for the Masses. Good evening, Chair and members. We like option 2, and because we want transit to be able to apply directly. We don't want transit agencies to lose any funding because we're having a hard time getting funding to begin with. And as far as infill projects, we would like to see infill projects allocate funds to transit needs. And I hate to say this, but the stadium is one of the infill projects that we would like to see something come from the stadium to give to transit. It's not in the term paper, but we would like to see it kind of be in the term paper, that some sort of percentage would be given to transit, because transit is going to be doing people back and forth, and they spend a lot of money on advertising. So we support option 2. And one of the things that came up recently, that there was a call out from RT to go to SACOG and talk about a $20 million that RT may need. And I just want to put out to all the transit advocates and other advocates that we need to listen to RT and come together and go to the meetings and come together and try to get funds for regional transit. Thank you.
Thank you. James Corliss.
Chair Kennedy, members of the board, thank you very much. Appreciate your consideration of this issue. Let me give you a little bit of background about how important this initiative is. As you know, Chair Kennedy, we have a transportation plan sustainable community strategy that the region has to adopt next February. We have to hit a 19% greenhouse gas reduction target. That's a huge stretch. We made the argument to the Air Resources Board that our region is different, with the same target as San Francisco, LA, and San Diego. We won that argument. They said, indeed, you are different. You tell us how you're going to get there to 19%. In those conversations, we met with a lot of folks from the development industry, nonprofit affordable housing providers, all across the 6-county region. And especially on the development and infill side, the answer was there's a financial gap in making enough of the infill housing pencil. ARB also was very interested in us being a demonstration project for the rest of the state and inland California, and said, what would it take? So our answer to what would it take is $100 million a year for 4 years to change the trajectory in 3 ways. Infill development, speeding up transit service, so that is things like microtransit and bus rapid transit and deployment of electric vehicles. That's what you have before you. These are not transportation funds. This is us going to the legislature trying to get money to be a demonstration project to add to the pie here. In this 6-county region. We have 26 of our 28 jurisdictions that have submitted a pre-application along with RT, the Air District, and SMUD, which is fantastic. We're getting a lot of support. We would love to get your support on this, and I would just advise you to not put too many qualifications on that support yet. One of the things I just want to answer in terms of transit can't apply directly, what we mean by that is if we're doing things like bus rapid transit, we just want to see transit partner with the jurisdictions, right? So if you actually are doing either microtransit or bus rapid transit, we want to see a partnership. That's simply what we mean by that. We probably could have written that a little bit better. This is all right now kind of in draft form. This is a big lift in the legislature. This is a budget ask. As your staff said, we have Senator Pan, Assemblymember Cooley. We're trying to get our entire delegation and the entire region behind this thing, because if we don't hit the 19% target, we will be out of compliance, we'll be in an APS, and we'll be actually cut off from state competitive transportation funds like SB1 congested corridors, money that we just won 2 big grants for last year. So this is critical. I hear your concerns and I understand them. We're very open to working with you, but it is really important too that we get RT's support on this initiative. Thanks very much.
Are there any questions, Mr. Corliss? Mr. Harris.
So James, is there anything that SACOG could do to assure RT that it wouldn't be competitive? Because it's not guaranteed that this would pit RT, against SACOG for the same pot of money. Is there anything that you can do to assure RT that it doesn't put us at a competitive disadvantage?
And I think by that, your staff is talking about other state funds, right, that you're hoping to get state of good repair for. I can't guarantee that. It is not. We're not going after transportation funds. We're actually being somewhat agnostic, but either general fund or GGRF. I would say, if all my time in Congress, if we have a major transportation bill that we're trying to up the transit share in the transportation bill and a stimulus bill comes along, we work on that stimulus bill just as much as we'd work on the transportation bill. I would just say don't foreclose those opportunities. I mean, we can give you that analysis in terms of they're not coming from the same pot. I think the argument you're hearing from your staff is if the Sacramento region were to be successful in winning this money, would it make the state feel like you've already been successful and perhaps we don't want to give you any more? I don't think that, frankly, we can't afford to think like that because of our region and our needs. So I can't sit here and guarantee you that we wouldn't be competitive, but we've been very careful not to craft this to go after funds that are dedicated to transportation or transit. That makes sense.
So in terms of like number 2 and option 2, number 2, transit agencies won't lose existing funds. We're talking about pretty much the same argument there. Is that correct?
Well, when I see that, what I hear, there's no existing funds that RT is getting that you would lose. The question is the future, right? The question is going forward.
That's right.
If we were to be a successful region, just like we won 2 SB1 congested corridor grants, does that hurt us by winning other funding? That's, I think, the question in front of you. And I can't guarantee that doesn't hurt us. I just think we have to think like that. We have to think that we're going to be competitive and that we're the most deserving region in this state and we have to go for it. That's my approach. We've been very careful not to go after pots of money that are dedicated to transit or state of good repair. This is about becoming a demonstration program for the state and frankly, I think for the other 100 mid-sized regions that are out there, because we're not the Bay Area, we're not San Diego or LA, right? We have to think differently. RT is part of that solution. Infill is part of the answer. And I think we have to think like this way more and more.
Well, I would tend to agree with you. You know, there are a lot of benefits with this Green Means Go program. And certainly if it stimulates infill, that reflects well on RT in terms of getting more riders for the system. I think there's just a worry here, and I'm not sure that the worry is justified, per se. And there's no guarantees either way. But, yeah, I guess that's really what I'm trying to say, is that there are many needs in the region. Green Means Go would certainly help with the needs of the region, as does boosting transit. But I see they kind of achieve mutual goals. Thank you.
Director Natoli.
Question I have either for James or for Henry or Brent is, what sort of time sensitivity is there on this? I mean, this comes as an information item to us this evening. Our staff is seeking direction. You know, I saw the presentation a few weeks ago after STA. You have other folks who have seen it maybe multiple times. Then, you know, where you're lining up support seeking this agency's support. Obviously, I would share in some of the concerns that have been iterated here. What sort of time sensitivity? That's my question.
It's a budget request, as you see the letter in your packet there. So it runs the budget cycle through June 15th. As you know, budget season is upon us. So end of April, May is a critical time. That is the time to weigh in on. But I want to say this is a huge lift, right? I don't think our 6 counties and 22 cities and transit districts have gotten behind something this big. It's a big one. So that's, it'll play out through June 15th and when the budget is decided. So as soon as possible in terms of getting support out there. We've got good support from BIA, the realtors. We're working with a lot of the labor unions to get their support.
Okay, thanks. Maybe ask Henry or Brent while I've got the floor here then. Have we had any conversations on our own with either Senator Pan's office or Assemblymember Cooley's office about, because it would seem to me that even though someone can't, I would expect James or even the SACOG board be able to provide us with those assurances, rock solid, but I think making sure it's clear from, this agency, if that's what we choose to do, to support this, that here's the concerns we have, and that we would hope and desire them, not just hope, want them to be addressed in the budgeting process. And so I guess I'd ask you, Henry.
That's a tricky question. We have not talked to both of them.
Okay, that's fine.
But even when we talk to both of them, they cannot give us a definite answer.
Right.
Just like Director, I'm sorry, Harris just mentioned. It's really hard to say either way. But I would like to work with James to say, hey, if there any thing we can insert into that language to say, hey, this will not hurt the existing transit agency or other agency, whatever. What language you can put there to make. It's not really actually you guys or us. It's really the state staff when they evaluate our future applications. They should not use this against us. It's to change their mindset eventually. I think that's the key.
Okay. Well, I think it's important. My final comment, Mr. Chair, I think that, maybe Henry working with James and certainly our respective staffs, but that it'd be really clear that, it's not so much a qualified support as it is to make sure it's, at least from our perspective, is clearly communicated that, we're not going to be penalized. And nobody can assure us that, I guess, but I think that would be a concern going forward, particularly acknowledging where we are as an agency currently in trying to get our system into a state of good repair.
Director Hansen and then Director Budge. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hi, Mr. Corliss. Sorry for being late. I had to go to the Capitol for something. I think that this is a great sort of framework for moving us towards carbon emission reduction. I think, though, I think I heard some of the comments, and I've been part of some of the conversations that you've been having with our staff. There's an opportunity here to do some things that are really important, but I think what's continued to happen, and I don't think this is SACOG specific, so please don't take this personally, but we've really moved in our modality thinking to greening the transportation sector that we have, but without the bus and rail infrastructure being a priority like it was. And that's happening across the board, because every time we talk about an EV and the word autonomous comes up, everybody believes it's going to be like the Jetsons. If we just green the cars that we have, we can continue to live the existence that we've built out, far-flung communities, long commutes, long trips, and not being in sort of a more shared environment. And I know here when you talk about accelerating EV deployment, that's what I hear as part of this plan, and that's where I really maybe can spend some time with you understanding better what the goals of that particular bucket is, especially when it comes to moving people out of the idea that single occupancy EVs are really what we're striving for, because we know that we'll continue to see VMT increase if we don't really change our driving habits, and that's a big concern for obvious reasons. The other piece, though, is I don't know what the definition of infill is here, So like some projects in the city are considered infill, even though they may be in a greenfield area because they're within the municipal services area and they're not a new expanded scope of urban boundaries. But I tend to think more classically about infill being connected to transit. You know, SB 50 is moving through the legislative process right now. That really tries to connect housing and transit. And I don't see that really targeted in here. So I'm not sure that simply supporting infill without more details about what's meant, that will achieve the goal of Green Means Go. So that's the kind of information and data. And if it's possible to show what targets we'll be able to hit by implementing these strategies, that's the kind of data too that would help me say yes. Because right now, the go part of Green Means Go seems to only be focused on cars. And that to me, although there is the discussion about walking and biking, that's not fair. But I do think that we have to better refine those answers for me to be fully supportive.
Director Hansen, to your point, first of all, we have shared, this is about implementing the Sustainable Community Strategy, the SCS, right? That's actually in that the region is going to have to adopt next year, and we have one on the books. We've shared there's a map in there, centers and corridors, all over the 6-county region. We've shared that with staff from all of your jurisdictions. They've looked at that. They've actually come back in 26 of 28 jurisdictions, not all of them, some adopted resolutions, but some went as far, including the city of Sacramento, to actually sort of suggest, here's where green zones would be. They would actually be on the major arterial corridors, perhaps the very same places where you're trying to run more frequent service under SAC-RT Forward. So it's a pretty tight definition. And remember, what we're looking for here, and I think this is an opening, and I just want to remind you, this is a really good thing. We're this far. The state is looking to us to say, we'd like you to be a demonstration area. We're really interested in what you guys are doing. Lots of cool stuff is happening. Microtransit, gig car share. I know they're cars, but it's a really cool, exciting thing that's happening. So if we're going to be a demonstration project, I think we want to get if we get some money for this, we want to get both things that are transformational and things that can happen quickly and things that reduce GHG emissions. Right? And thus, I think in a place like the city of Sacramento, your staff, I know, is meeting across departments already to target those kind of primary sites for infill.
Mr. Chair, can I just respond
Absolutely.
to that real quick? Maybe a lot of work has happened at the staff level. This is the first time as a policymaker I've had any information in front of me. And I think I don't know enough. And that's what I'm trying to tell you, is that based on, what's in front of us here at this board, and I sit as a regional transit board member here. I don't sit as a city council member or air quality management district board member. I just sit here as an RT board member concerned about how we continue to provide backbone service to support those other mobility programs, but not clear where we fit into this picture. And I think from an identity standpoint, but overall, this system gets undervalued consistently by people that we rely on to understand our value. And I think SACOG's been a tremendous partner in turning those conversations around. And what I'm saying to you is, if I need to be educated, given the district that I represent, the boards I'm on, that means that there's a lot of work to do at the policymaker level to really understand what you're trying to do. And I think it's an opportunity to bridge that gap, because this is going to come up at the air board. It's probably going to come up at the Transportation Authority. It's going to come up in our various jurisdictions, and we need to get ahead of it. And this is just the first bite at that, really understanding. But all the policy experts are churning and burning on it, but that doesn't mean those of us who sit at the policy level really have been engaged.
Director Budge.
So Rancho Cordova adopted a support for the Green Means Go, and we identified the green zone, or whatever it's being called. Mm-hmm. But of course, that discussion had nothing to do with regional transit, only in passing. Mm-hmm. And so it occurs to me to wonder if there's been any thought given to this concept of partnerships. If the transit agencies have to partner with a local jurisdiction, then where's the mechanism for ensuring that the local jurisdiction gets the benefit within their green zone when in reality you've got, for instance, a light rail system that goes all the way from Folsom all the way out to Longview and down to Cosumnes, and who's to say that the partnership dollars that are awarded benefit Rancho Cordova, as an example, and they partly benefit Rancho Cordova and they partly benefit regional transit. How will you figure that out?
Trying to make sure I understand your question. I think
it just strikes me that the partnership demand creates additional technical challenges for splitting up monies.
It may. I mean, I think we're going to have that. We're going to have that challenge to begin with. I mean, I guess I would throw out an idea, right? That I know there's a lot of interest in that kind of closing that first last mile, 2 miles between the light rail stations, the job centers in Rancho. What could be done that would be innovative and interesting, right? And I don't even remember all the map of all the microtransit services you have, right? But an on-demand shuttle that could get people off the light rail to get to job centers, that I would think would be a partnership between the city and RT. I'm really just brainstorming now, right?
Yeah, which it is in part, but and quite frankly, I remember what the green zone looks like.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember where it goes from.
Sure, and to be clear, when your staff put those together, that was just what we're trying to do. So and then I'll shut up, I promise you. What we're trying to do is show the state legislature that we are a region that innovates, that we are a region that has high aspirations. And the first thing that the legislature said to us is like, really? Sacramento region? Like, what would you do? I mean, with 400 million, what would you do? 26 of 28 jurisdictions applied, RT, Air District, and SMUD. We are now able to say, these are exactly the kinds of things we could do, and here's where we would do it. This actually comes from our local jurisdictions. That is really, that's by way of saying, if we actually get money, we can rethink, and we will be as transparent as we can be with criteria, partnerships, and how we share it. But it was so important
and
for
how
us.
the money is spent.
I'm sure. I'm sorry, you said how
the money is spent.
How the money is spent?
In terms of transparency.
We'll do everything we can, right? It's the projects that are demonstration projects that show innovation, reducing greenhouse gas emissions, improving mobility, accelerating infill development. Those are the criteria, because we're trying to hit that 19% target that we really have to hit. Happy to come back to you at any point. If we're so lucky to get money, we will be absolutely happy to work with you at RT and your jurisdictions in figuring exactly how this gets spent.
If you get the money, I think we'll be knocking on your door.
Anybody else? We do have one more card. Thank you, Mr. Corliss. Mike Birnbaum.
Yes, Mike Barnbaum, Ride Downtown 916. We're going to go on record and second the motion by Barbara Stanton of Ridership for the Masses for item number 2 on the slide on the side of the room. Couple of friendly amendments, but it's important that transit can and should directly apply for Green Means Go funds. When RT is only getting 1/6 of a cent for Measure A funds, and as you heard earlier, and it was even read in the record, there is a state of unknown right now going forward for the Transportation Development Act, and why there's this task force being formed by the California Transit Association. There are a lot of unknowns. If this is something of funds that RT can directly go after, the more power to RT. And so, yes, Director Hansen, it would concern me if both Barbara and myself were up there right next to you as policymakers, that there's a lot of information that is not known in this. And so I think that item 2 of 3 under option 2, just a little grammatical thing, it would be lose existing funds rather than loose existing funds. But, I think coming up, it would be important to attend the Transit Coordinating Committee of SACOG on April 17th. And just to staff, staff mentioned in the presentation a couple of the MPO agencies that were looked at were MTC of the Greater Bay Area and SCAG, or Southern California Association of Governments. I think that we need to perhaps expand the horizon on that note just a little bit and maybe take a look at SJCOG, Fresno COG, Kern COG, Sandbag, or San Bernardino Association of Governments, as well as SANDAG, or San Diego Association of Governments, and see where the split on a previous slide is of what those entities get for transit compared to the 16% that SACOG is getting. Yes, to conclude, we'll go on record and support option 2 before what is being asked to get direction back to staff and second that motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barnbaum. Mr. Benner. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I guess I'd just like to kind of come back to the point of anytime there is new funding, we're always, to that point, looking for this new funding. I think as it relates to innovative ideas, I think we've actually done a lot at RT in the past couple years with with the existing funding with innovative ideas. We've come out with microtransit. We've done a mobile app. We're doing late night service for light rail. We're doing more for the Golden One service. So with the funds already out there, we've done a lot of this. I think where we're lacking right now is in this state of good repair, and that's something where what we're seeing in our operating budgets. And obviously at this level of detail, what we've given tonight, you won't see, but you'll see the repairs and maintenance costs continuing to climb on our light rail vehicles, on our buses, and seeing some of those light rail vehicles modernized can help with the GHG. I think it can also, with the buses as well, there's new technology. So anything we can do to take some of that money and pump it back into RT would be great. So I think having the opportunity to apply directly for funds kind of puts us out there and allows us to kind of reap the rewards of some of the good things that we have been working on, this new technology and this new advances.
And we particularly really like, the pushing of the electrification about, this fund, because we have about 400 small and big buses we need to replace in next 10 years or 12 years. We would love to get some money from this. If we get this $400 million, we would love to apply for some money to replace our 400 small or big buses. That cost about $300 million to replace all of those.
Director Howell.
On that front, I think the argument is made a little bit easier if you can quantify what that greenhouse gas reduction is per bus, per light rail vehicle, whatever the number is. And then I think it's easier for the rest of it, for everybody in the region to say that's a good idea or that's a bad idea, or if it remains the way it is right now and transit can apply directly, so RT's not competing with SACOG and all of the jurisdictions that are part of SACOG, then it makes it easier to make the argument. If it is a large chunk of money, then when Linda and Henry are arguing over how much money Rancho is going to get versus RT, at the end of the day, we do need to get the money first before we can fight over how to spend it.
I think that's a good point.
Yes.
Director Hume.
To echo that point, if we can spend this long wondering whether or not we should ask the state for $400 million, I can only imagine the discussions we'll have if we have $400 million sitting in front of us. But I think that I would echo something that Director Hansen kind of pointed to, which is, as part of this a larger greenhouse gas reduction strategy, you have to be in a mindset and looking through a lens of disruption. We're not looking at what we're doing to do it a little bit better. We're looking at drastically changing what we've been doing. And toward that extent, if you can drop, 200, 300, 5,000 new riders on a bus line, that has positive benefit consequence to RT. Which is not a direct RT ask for funding. So You know, I think that anytime we can get more funding is a good thing, but we need to keep our focus on improving the product that we are providing so that we are prepared to capture that ridership should it arrive. So I'm in support of option 1, and I will make that motion.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a first motion and a second. Is there discussion? I will actually just say that I do not like the component of that transit cannot apply directly. You know, infill is important to all of us. Higher densities is important to all of us, particularly around transit. But if you have a transit system that is subpar, you're just going to have people walking by the station. And you know, I don't find any reason to directly preclude. I do think that we should encourage partnerships and encourage creative partnerships between the jurisdictions, but precluding RT, I simply don't support.
Mr. Chair, could I make a substitute motion for option 2?
Yes, sir. Is there a second?
This is
I'll second
an
it.
informational item.
Yeah, Chair, this is an informational item.
But
Well, we're giving direction, though.
Yeah,
and we have to give clear direction.
Yes.
Right now, we've got some pretty
Yep.
squishy direction.
Yes.
So,
I would support, I would ask for a friendly amendment to the substitute motion if you will only include item number 1 under option 2. To the chair's point, I can support that. I can't support we don't know how we would lose existing funds. That wouldn't be up to us or to SACOG. And as far as attaching any infill projects with some sort of additional fee or fund, or I'm not in support of that. So, but if you'd be willing to make that amendment, I'd be able to support your motion.
This just comes back to my overall concern that we just don't know enough. I would say a lot of the newer projects, like the one on Jackson Highway that we had before us, did include a transit component to support its long-term use. So we have a precedent here that looks at those things. A lot of the new growth areas in the city include assessment districts with TDMs, essentially. And so I think that actually is consistent with what we've done, and maybe it pertains to scale of the project. I'd be willing to think about that, but I think generally the point is that this needs more work and more information, and so I don't think I would take the friendly amendment at this point, Mr. Hume, but I am open to that conversation.
Mr. Chair. So, but I completely agree that item 3 doesn't belong in there, because some of us do have transportation fees that have certain amounts going to transportation and certain amounts going to transit. I mean, certain roads and transit, okay? So some of that exists already, and I agree, I would not want to burden our home builders with an additional fee.
okay, well, we have a substitute motion on the floor to support option 2. And again, this is more of a straw poll informational for our staff than anything else.
I'd almost suggest that we maybe not necessarily vote on either, but request that the item come back to the board at the next meeting for further
Well, all right,
discussion, given the comments.
So let me ask this, then, if we were go with that direction, since there's not a binding vote of any kind anyway, has staff received enough information to feel comfortable to come back to us with that? I mean, there is one area that most people are pretty much in agreement here.
Number two is off. Is that what I'm hearing?
No, what I'm hearing is that number 1 of number 2 is pretty universal.
Yes. I kind of want to get a poll of that as well, because I know originally, Director Hume, you were saying 1, but you're okay with 2-1.
Yeah.
Okay. Everyone's okay with 2-1. Is that what I'm hearing?
That's what I'm.
Mr. Chair, just point of parliamentary procedure, given that we have a motion that was seconded on the floor.
You can call the question, Mr. Hanson.
I would just like to try that for the sake of this, because I think it would be helpful. And if it doesn't prevail, we'll go back to the original motion. If that doesn't prevail, then I think the direction that you're talking about is sufficient. But
Calling the question, Mr. Hanson? You're calling the question?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Then on that, we will, as direction to staff, we will entertain Mr. Hanson's motion, so it's a substitute motion of option 2.
With all 3 items, right?
with all three items, can we do a roll call vote, please?
We can. And may I have the seconder of the substitute motion, please?
Mr. Miller, I believe?
No.
No? Who was the seconder?
I
thought
don't
heard.
know, that's why I
I
was
just sworn I
asking.
heard one.
I'll second.
Oh, Mr. Natoli.
Thank you. Okay, so Director Budge.
No.
Director Hanson.
Aye.
Director Harris.
No?
Director Howell.
No.
Director Hume.
No.
Director Jennings is marked as being absent. Director Miller.
No.
Director Natoli.
Aye.
Director Chenier and Cerna are absent, and Chair Kennedy.
No.
With that, the substitute motion fails.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
I would be willing to amend my original motion to go from option 1 to option 2 with including sub-option 1.
The chair would second that. Roll call vote, please, if there's no comments or questions. Thank you.
Okay. Director Budge.
Yes.
Director Hanson.
No.
Director Harris.
Aye.
Director Howell.
Yes.
Director Hume.
Yes.
Director Jennings is absent. Director Miller.
No.
Director Natoli.
No.
Director Chenier and Cerna are absent, and Chair Kennedy.
Aye.
That passes by 55 votes.
Okay, so again, straw poll, but you heard a lot of comments in addition, so I think that did provide enough direction for staff to be able to continue to deal with SACOG on this issue and come back to us.
All right, thank you very
The
much.
only other comment that I wanted to make is I think we need, for some
Ms.
of us,
Howell.
we need a better, sorry, Patrick, we need a better definition of exactly what infill means.
Okay.
And I'm asking that in part on behalf of the city of Folsom because I don't think the city of Folsom qualifies for infill ever.
Okay.
So I just want to confirm or deny that.
I will. We've got that note down.
All right, thank you very much. It was a spirited discussion. Next item, please.
Item number 7, the General Manager's Report.
Okay, thank you very much. Then I believe, there is no closed session. Is there any issues that the board members would like to discuss? No?
I'll accept the meeting minutes as presented.
Then with that, we're adjourned.